$1 million, $3 million, $5 million, 12 times your yearly salary. Those are some of the answers you get when you ask the question, how much money do I need to retire? I don't like any of those answers because they're all too general and doesn't really take into account your specific situation. Plus, I think the real number is going to be a whole heck of a lot lower than you think. So let me show you how much you actually need to save for retirement in a way that's going to get you closer to a more accurate number based on your specific situation. Oh, and it can easily be done in 5 simple steps and will only take you about 10 to 30 minutes to figure out. Listen up, Gen X, Millennials, and Gen Z people, because you need to know this sooner rather than later. Look, we all have big dreams and ideas of what we want to do in retirement, but whenever I ask most people how much money they need to do those things, I usually get a blank stare. Since the majority of people that I work with are in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, I understand why this isn't at the top of their mind. Retirement feels like it's so far away that it doesn't really make sense to even bother thinking about that sort of thing right now. I'd argue that getting a rough idea as early as possible is just as important for us younger people. At least when you're in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, you still have time to make any adjustments, so you're not scrambling to make up for lost time when you're in your 50s. Not calculating how much money you need to retire would be like me telling you to get in your car and drive without giving you a destination. I don't care where you drive to, but when I tell you to arrive in a certain location, I expect you to be there. Next thing you know, I tell you to be in Miami, Florida in 6 hours. But since you're in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it takes 10 hours to drive there, you're either going to come up short or you're going to have to drive extremely recklessly to get there. The first thing we need to figure out is how much you're going to spend every month in retirement. Now, I'll admit right off the rip that this number isn't going to be 100% accurate, and that's okay. The point of this exercise is to get you at least headed in the right direction so you have a rough idea. Instead of having you head north or west in that car, I can at least get you driving south since your destination is going to be in that area. There's 2 different ways you can calculate this. Which method you choose is going to depend on how detailed you want to get. For each of them, I want you to calculate this in current dollars. The first way, which is a little bit quicker, is to take a general number based on what you spend right now with a few minor adjustments. If you currently spend about $6,000 per month on all of your expenses, then you might go with that number or bump it up or down based on the type of retirement that you want. Keep in mind that spending in retirement is way different from what we're used to leading up to that point. All of the data that I've found says that for the vast majority of people, spending will most likely decline as we get older. Trying to figure out this number trips up a lot of us younger people because we're thinking about retirement through the lens of our expenses right now that might not exist at that point in time. If you're expecting for your home to be paid off, then that expense would naturally need to be backed out of the plan. You'll still have taxes and insurance to pay for, but the mortgage part won't be there any longer. You most likely won't be investing at that point in time like you are right now, so that number would need to be taken out as well. Kind of think in those terms, that way you know what needs to be removed from your plan. Fidelity says to plan on spending between 55 and 80% of your working annual income. A survey from the Employee Benefit Research Institute shows that about 66% of people spend between $1,000 and $4,000 per month in today's dollars. If you're wondering about inflation, then hang tight because we'll cover that in just a minute. The second way to estimate your expenses is going to get a lot more detailed, so it'll take a little longer to create, but it will be more accurate. For this method, you'll go through each individual spending category to put a specific number down for each one. Don't forget to account for how much you want to set aside every month for the vacations you plan to take every year, holidays, hobbies, monthly savings for future cars, and things like that. When you make these detailed spending plans, you're really going to want to imagine what life is going to look like at that time so that you can plan your spending accordingly. If you need some help, here's a little cheat sheet of the average monthly expenses from a survey that EBRI did in 2022. I have a free spending audit and planning spreadsheet if you want to use it to plan out your expenses. It's what I have people fill out for their current spending when they work with me, but it think could still be helpful in this case. I'll have a link in the description to get a copy of it. Once you have a number for expenses, the second thing you need to do is account for inflation so we know how much this amount is going to be in the future. Inflation has been very high over the past couple of years, but no one actually knows if it'll continue this way and for how long. Because of that, you should use a number that you feel comfortable with. I'll caution you ahead of time that if you decide to expect very high inflation to continue, then it'll basically be impossible for you and pretty much everyone else to save enough money for retirement. I have zero clue what's going to happen, so on screen I'm going to share some historical inflation data for you to use. I put together 1-year inflation as well as rolling periods in 5, 10, 15, 20, and 30-year increments. As you can see, it fluctuates from time period to time period. So for the sake of this video, I'm going to just assume a 3% average annual inflation rate. If you decide that your expenses are going to be $4,000 per month or $48,000 per year, then when you plan to retire in 30 years, the inflation adjusted amount is going to be a little over $116,000. I came up with this inflation adjusted number by plugging the current dollar amount into a free inflation calculator online. The one that I used was from smartasset.com. The third thing we need to figure out is what your monthly income will be in retirement. By income, I'm referring to all non-stock market related dollars coming in. Think of income from sources like Social Security, pensions, real estate, from a business you own, and things like that. Everyone has different views on where Social Security is going to be at in the future, and when you decide to take it will determine how much you get. Based on that, you can either choose to count the full amount, count on a smaller amount, or don't count it at all. Do whatever you feel comfortable with when it comes to this income source. I have a video where I discuss my thoughts on the topic, so I'm not going to dive deep into it here. The video will be linked above my head and down in the description for you to check out after this one. If it helps you come up with a number, the average monthly payout across all retired workers right now is $1,827 per person as of this year. It's also going to be adjusted for inflation, so it'll increase as time goes on. If we say that your Social Security payment for an individual is going to be $2,000 per month in today's dollars, then after 3% inflation in 30 years, your yearly income from this source will be a little over $58,000. We'll also say that you're going to be receiving about $1,000 per month in future dollars from 2 rental properties that you've accumulated, which will bring your yearly non-stock market retirement income up to $70,000 when you go to retire in 30 years. Before I show you the next step, please help support my dog Molly and the free content on this channel by hitting that thumbs up button and sharing the video with someone you think it would help. At this point, we need to figure out the gap between your income and expenses to find out how much we need to come up with from stock market related investments. We'll take the inflation adjusted $116,000 in expenses and subtract out the inflation adjusted income of $70,000, which leaves us with a $46,000 per year gap that we need to come up with. As a quick reminder, don't get too freaked out by these large amounts, because these numbers are after 30 years of future inflation. You've got to remember that as long as you are focused on getting regular raises at work every year, then over time, these amounts make a lot more sense. In this example, you're actually going to need to be able to withdraw more than $46,000 per year from your investments because we need to account for taxes. Now, this is all going to depend on what future tax rates will be and the types of investment accounts your money is in. The problem is that A, I don't know what tax rates will be in 30 years, nor does anyone else. And B, I don't know which types of investment accounts your money is in. So you're going to have to look at your specific situation to come up with these numbers. There's a lot of different strategies that you can use to reduce taxes in retirement, like for example, takes X amount of dollars from traditional accounts and X amount of dollars from Roth accounts to stay under certain tax thresholds. But we're not going to cover that in detail in this video. You're also taxed on Social Security as well, but showing you how to calculate that is a whole nother topic for another video, so we are not going to touch on it. But it is something to be aware of. Remember, the goal of this initial exercise is to give us a general idea of how much money we need to retire. For the sake of simplicity in this example, let's just say that you'll pay 20% in taxes in 30 years. Because of that, instead of only withdrawing $46,000 per year from your investments, you're going to need to withdraw $55,200 so that you can pay $9,200 in taxes, which will leave you with that $46,000 you need for expenses. Knowing the yearly amount that you need to withdraw from your investment accounts, we can use that number to back into the total portfolio amount that you're going to need in the fifth step. To do that, we have to decide on a safe withdrawal rate. A safe withdrawal rate is the percentage of your investment portfolio that you can withdraw each year without a high risk of running out of money over your retirement horizon. 4% is a rule of thumb a lot of you might have heard of before. I put a little asterisk above that number because some people say it can be a little higher, some people say it can be a little lower, and it might need adjusted as time goes on. I'm not going to go through all sides of the argument in this video because, once again, this video is to show you the mechanics for how to get a rough idea for how much money you need in retirement. Feel free to use whatever withdrawal rate you're comfortable with. To figure out how much you need to save for retirement, you're going to take the yearly amount you need to withdraw from your investment accounts and divide that number by the safe withdrawal rate that you've chosen. For our example, we take the pre-tax amount of $55,200, then divide it by our 4% withdrawal rate to come up with $1,380,000. This $1.38 million is the amount that you would need to have across all of your investment accounts once you're ready to retire. Before you look at that high number and freak out, keep in mind that this is for someone receiving one monthly Social Security check and after 30 years of inflation, so it's going to seem really, really big. In today's dollars, that $1.38 million is actually only $570,000. While $500,000 is a lot of money, it is way more attainable when you think about it in those terms. One thing I want to make sure to call out is that you should plan on this final number changing over time. Adjustments are naturally going to need to be made. I'd recommend reviewing and rerunning these numbers every few years because major and even minor events will most likely change how much you need to save for retirement. Plus, as time goes on, you might realize that you're going to need a little more money to cover certain expenses you don't think about right now. For example, I was just on a hike this morning with my dog Molly and realized that in retirement, I'll probably need to be setting aside some money for new trail shoes every year. Since I plan to continue hiking during that time, it'll cause me to burn through shoes at a higher rate than most people. The goal should be to get this initial plan in place, so at the very least, you have something to aim for and to make improved adjustments to as time goes on. Hit that thumbs up button and share the video to help support my dog Molly and this channel. Remember that the free tools and spreadsheets are down in the description below. I'll see you in the next one, friends. Done.